Don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can't lend your hand. For the times, they are a-changin'. Or so wrote Bob Dylan. This is a sentiment as old as, well, being old. Now, while this concept might be a little heavy for just one YouTube episode, when it comes to wrestling, it can be summed up quite nicely with one particular feud. And the great thing about this feud is that it's a real backstage beef. Or at least, that's what some people have you believe.
Oh, please, it's totally a real feud. Don't be ridiculous. The internet never lies.
Oh, it's fake, you thundering goat. Don't be such a mock. How can you be such a simpleton?
There's a lot behind this topic, which is why we'll be talking about protecting kayfabe versus exposing the business, the old school versus the new wave, and the truth behind one of wrestling's best rivalries. Because today, Dave knows Jim Cornette versus the Young Bucks. For those of you who aren't hardcore smarks, allow me to catch you up. The Young Bucks brothers Matt and Nick Jackson are one of, if not the, most successful acts in wrestling who are not currently signed with the WWE. Jim Cornette is a famed promoter, manager, and backstage guru who is also not currently signed by the WWE, and the two have been known to exchange harsh words with each other back and forth over the internet about differing opinions on the business of pro wrestling. The two represent polar opposite sides of the pro wrestling spectrum. Cornette believes that traditional road-tested strategies are timeless and always deliver in the end. The Young Bucks, in contrast, feel that we live in a new age where all the old rules go right out the window. These two ideologies are naturally opposing to one another, so it should be no surprise that these two parties would butt heads. One major example of their disagreement is the Superkick Party. The Young Bucks have established a reputation of throwing a lot of super kicks, one right after another, in their matches, and the crowd has come to expect this, and they pop for it. However, while it is popular among the indie crowds, popularity may not be everything, because there are those that criticize this as being a faulty practice. A superkick has been used as a finisher for other matches, and when you give one only to have your opponent get right back up for another, and another, repeatedly, this damages the credibility of the move. How can wrestlers potentially use this as a finisher now that fans have seen people take 10 of them in a row and sell them no harder than they would a rough sneeze? Now, some have argued that everyone knows that wrestling is fake, so it really doesn't matter. Others have also made the point that in the independent scene, the audience is a small community of wrestling nerds who don't really care anyway, so the move's credibility is not ruined for the greater masses. But on the other hand, others will say that protecting finishers is important, because if a simple move no longer ends a match, then finishers will have to become more and more elaborate, which will also make them more dangerous. Also, continuing with the Superkick Party, the Young Bucks have also been criticized as being spot monkeys. The independent scene in general is often criticized for being a demonstration of complex moves rather than being an exaggerated but yet still believable simulation of combat. And this term is not lost on the Young Bucks themselves. In fact, they had shirts printed up celebrating the term, which they sold to the public. And that brings me to my next point. The back and forth has generated plenty of attention from smarky fans who clamor to pick a side and represent where their loyalties lie. And the Young Bucks and Cornette have gained quite a bit of notoriety from this. But maybe, just maybe, that was the goal all along. As I've already gone more in depth on in a previous video, the history of the term mark in wrestling is an interesting one, and may still apply to fans even today, and especially in this situation. A lot of people erroneously believe that a wrestling mark is just someone who thinks that wrestling is real. And while yes, someone like that does qualify as a mark, the term is not that limiting. A mark in wrestling is the same as a mark as it pertains to grifting. A mark is the target of a scam. And if you get invested in this Young Buck Cornette rivalry and give either party money by buying their merch or supporting their cause, then maybe, just maybe, you might just be a mark yourself. But hey, there's no evidence to support that this feud is fake, right?
Oh, yes, there is.
Ignore him. Ignore everything he has to say. It's all a bunch of lies.
Many believe that Jim Cornette, as an old-school purist, found a way in the modern era to bring the facade back to pro wrestling. People have claimed that the internet has made wrestling fans too smart, too aware of the business, and that you can't fool people anymore because they've all seen the wizard behind the curtain. But to that, some believe that since wrestling is an industry founded by gypsies, tramps, and thieves, that those behind it simply found a new way to trick us by using our greatest weapon for information against us. We see Twitter exchanges between wrestlers, we see shoot interviews, and we hear podcasts, and we assume that we're getting wrestlers at their most candid and that they're telling us the truth. But what if the performance hasn't stopped? Some say the best way to figure out if something is a scam or not is the Latin phrase cui bono, or who benefits, and looking at how much attention and money Cornette and the Young Bucks have made from people getting invested in their rivalry, it's hard not to suspect that this isn't all just one big work. And of course, there is also the fact that they told us it was. He comes up to us and says, "Hey Bucks, so good to see you guys. Isn't it great we got the only angle people believe in these days?" The Young Bucks told this story on an episode of the Talk Is Jericho podcast. They talked about a time when they met Jim Cornette at a GFW show. They then went on to say that they didn't know that Jim Cornette was doing a work until he said that to them. They found out at that very moment that Cornette had been working everyone the whole time, and that he has no real problem with them, and that this was just another angle to make money, not only for himself, but also for the Young Bucks. However, you could see the problem with this. If I say that only a mark believes everything they hear on a podcast, then how can we take this statement from the Bucks as valid because, well, it was on a podcast? Also, as far as I know, Cornette has never confirmed the story either, but then again, if it were true, why would he? And if this feud was all a work, then this would also come to question a lot of other alleged backstage beefs that Cornette had over the years, such as his feuds with Kevin Steen, El Generico, and Vince Russo.
Oh, come on, he definitely hates Vince Russo.
Oh, Cornette just has you so hooked, line and sinker. You are playing such the potsy.
Was Cornette working everybody, including the Young Bucks, with this feud? Are the Young Bucks working everybody by saying that it's all just a work? And is all this confusion exactly the point in the first place? Well, what do you guys think? Is the Young Bucks Jim Cornette feud all one big work? And whether it is or not, what do you think about spot monkeys and devaluing moves? And do tried and true wrestling tactics still work, or do we need fresh strategies for the new millennium? Let me know in the comments, and please don't forget to like this video and to share it with your friends. Thank you for watching, and as always, this has been Dave Knows.